Hey guys, it's Rabin, and I was cruising Reddit and saw a post by someone, I don't remember the name exactly, but they were saying it was in response to the What If unofficial trailer, and basically saying, I wish I could build like that, which is flattering, because at least a couple of those ships were mine, but of course Delmont and Skylord ships, and a few others too. Um, and I thought it would be interesting to take a quick look back. Now, this is going to be a Cliff Notes version of my year on StarMade, if you will. But I've built some relatively impressive ships in the past, I think, and we got two work in progresses over here. And there's one of the ships from the video, and one of the other ones. Well, it didn't start like that. It actually all started with this. This is the second ship I ever made. I ended up calling it the Dreadnought back when the original Isanth was in the game and the main, enemy. And I thought this thing was awesome. And mind you, these are shield supply beams. They used to be missile launchers. The old, I think they were BBs, I want to say. But that code got taken out and replaced with shield supply beams. So, yeah. These are mostly unaltered blueprints, but this down here is what my first ship turned out to look like. Not the prettiest of all things. So yeah, I mean, we all start slow, and I prefer, I guess prettier looking ships. That's just my thing, as opposed to super effective. I like effective enough to do the damn job, but as opposed to super amazing effective. Anyway, so moving on, we've got the Mother 2, which was my first carrier, and this actually docks one of these, or that and the ship underneath. The Dreadnought goes right here. I had a repair ship, I think, that I put right on this one, and then that miner went right there. Not the prettiest of all things, mind you. This was all in survival. This is all before wedges, really. Or not before wedges, but before pentas and tetras. I had corners. I didn't have anything else. Corners, wedges, and regular blocks. And so, yeah, not exactly the prettiest thing I've ever built. Of course, I never really finished it either, which probably didn't help. And of course, the best part is I put the core up here, not realizing that it could get cored so very easily. So then I literally built this armored shell around the core, right there, just hardened hull that I had managed to find from killing pirates. And then I made this little thing, and this is actually, I think this is the first time I ever figured out creative mode controls. And this is the Lance frigate. And mind you, I'm Cliff's noticing over about, in the process of this, probably another 5 builds that I did that I just don't have on hand. But yeah, this is a little Lance frigate, just meant as a buzz around. Turns out not nearly as effective as I thought it was. Cool design though. I might have to go back and play with this sometime. But yeah, moving on. This was built from a Smedit model. Now, when I say that, I mean I spawned in a 600-meter long Smedit model, and then I hand-built this to look like the 600-meter long one to figure out how to build interesting shapes. And this was the Sarakai. This is what got me on the Mushroom Fleet server. I never really finished the damn thing. It's mostly just open space. Although I had kind of figured out efficient power at this point. The problem is, I hadn't completely figured out. As you can see, that's wrong. So, it is what it is. And then, some cannons and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was the first. I kind of consider this Gen 1. It takes a little while. You'll go from Gen 1, which is whatever you can make, you're experimenting, figuring out how all the different wedges and all the different block types are like, so you can actually understand what each one does and understand the basics of how do I get the damn thing to move, have shields and have guns if that's what it needs to have, etc., without, screwing up too much. And then how do I shell it, And so that's what that was. This is how do I make an interesting hull design. And then if we come down here, this is the first big build. Now, I started this one before I started this one. but I finished that one first because it's a lot smaller. This is the Athena. This is the reason I started YouTubing, because Tom, every time I tried to get this ship reviewed on the server, I inevitably couldn't get there, or the server crashed, or I was working, or whatever. And so I made this, and it's very, very, very bright and very, very, very white. But it was a cool carrier concept, and maybe I'll revisit this one too. Now I'm thinking about it. Let's see, and then we have like a little 5x5 reactor there that does not actually power the ship. This is what powers the ship. But it's got full interior. So I taught myself how to do the basics of setting up rooms and things like that with this one. Again, absolutely piss poor core placement. Yeah, that's 5 blocks that you have to shoot through to hit the core. Pretty stupid, but it ended up looking pretty cool. Really beautiful part is the hangars, of course. A bunch of my little mechs, and the mech I made that I recolored for Tomino-sama, which was pretty cool. So moving on from there, the third one on this list is this one. This is the Nighthawk, and actually this has, text. This is kind of my first combat-worthy ship. Now, obviously now it doesn't work, and I have not refit it at all. This was built on 2 planes of symmetry, which, hit or miss on that. Ends up being kind of brick-like, and it could have used some flaring out wingy bits. I've learned a lot since I built this one, but it's kind of got this nice little core at the back sort of thing. And if you ever look at my ships, if it's a transport ship, it's got the core as far forward as I can put it, because I assume the ship will be running away. If it's a combat ship, I put the core about 2/3 of the way back, so that because the front end's going to be aimed hopefully towards the enemy more, which means it needs to be able to take more hits from the front. that's seriously that's my rule of thumb. Anyway, moving on, we'll go to what I'll call like Gen 4, I guess. And this is where so Gen 1 was figuring out what blocks did what, how to slap stuff together, how to play the damn game, basically. Gen 2 was, how do I make something look interesting, right? How do I make an interior? How do I make things look kind of interesting exterior-wise, and make things relatively pretty? How do I use advanced build mode to in an effective way? That stuff. Third one took all of that and put it together. So this is the Naviri. Now this is an updated version of the Naviri, so it has pentas and tetras, as you'll probably be able to see right up here. But it looks very much like the original. The interior is probably the most different, and that's because I changed the lighting. It's still got very much the same stuff. This took forever to build for me, because I never really finished the thing. Like, I got probably 80% done, and this happens a lot. If I get close to finishing a build at all, I'll get to about 80%, and then I just kind of peter off and start a new project. But yeah, we've got a nice little interior. And remember, most of these interiors were done before pentas and tetras, so to keep that in mind, and have access to quite as many blocks. None of the blocks I think have changed, just the lighting, so keep that in mind. You'll see in here, I go up, and here's a core room. And if I look right down, this is where the core is, and I go straight up. That's towards the front of the thing, because I assumed it would be running away, and run this thing does. It's called the Naviri because Naviri means ship in French. Very original, I know. But it's French, so it runs away, and it runs away well. Sorry to any of my French viewers, I'm sorry, but it was too easy. And then we got our bridge here, and this is pretty much original. The side pieces have actually been altered a little bit to actually go into down into the floor a little bit, and it's kind of nice. And here's what I kind of figured would be maintenance and engineering, and then small med room. Nothing too special. And down here, what's What's this? That's the gravity elevator. We got orientable gravity. I started putting that in. That's a door out, and some of this has logic now too, so I guess that's changed. Crew quarters stay very, very red and very, very dark. The hangars, and then I think, yeah, it goes back up. All right, so that's where I went. Here's the Helix. These two ships right here were built in a single night. I went freaking nuts. So the original Helix did not look quite like this, but this is the finished version back then. It's going to be updated. It's on my list of refits to do, and I really, really liked it, and it's a really strong, it's actually what I call a heavy fighter. This thing used to have 140,000 shields. It probably doesn't have that many anymore. But she packs a pretty decent punch. It's a fun ship to fly. It's a little slow for well, not for its size, but just in general. But as in turning speed and all. But I think that's just because it's relatively wide and it's pretty long. But yeah, so this is the first time I ever did like asymmetrical doors, so you can only get in right here. And as you can notice, there's no interior. This is just systems. I actually did the same thing here. This is the Centurion. It's my first vertical ship. Turned out pretty well. And if you ever end up watching my War Were Declared video, this is the ship I'm flying right here. So you get to see the viewport. Now that's with the old turret, which is a single barrel. This is a double. Guns are all located on the opposite side. So yeah, and I think this one's actually a proper refit. I don't remember. And then I started working on, the big, terrifying projects. This is the Argus. And you can kind of see the progression, It's all about make every ship better than your last one. And, this is a progression of about a year. I've been playing for a little over a year, but haven't really started up too many new projects recently. This is where we've added interior stuff, gotten a little bit better at that sort of stuff. We can come down here. I think it's this side, if I remember right. Has a little classroom. Now this is more updated. So, meeting room, standing room style meeting room. I don't have anything there. This is crew quarters. All old style. And then, as you can see, I don't have every block filled or anything like that on this one. And I'll be going back and redoing this entire ship. Don't ever be afraid to cut something. If you got really, really far with a ship, don't think that you have to stick with it. Just cut it out, take what you learned from it, and just keep on rolling. That's kind of an important thing. And I try to give that piece of advice to everyone. But anyway, that's sort of Gen 3. That's I was figuring out my style. I wanted to get everything kind of ironed out, learn how to do interiors, learned how to proportion a little bit better. And then we have what I will affectionately call Gen 4 / in a way, maybe 5. Kind of in a weird spot right now where I'm kind of between. And this is where you start building more layers and getting ratios correct and learning how to fit a lot of blocks and connect up the backs of one room into the front of another, if you will. Just different pieces. I did not mean to do that, sorry. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And this is an old frame. I built this a while back, and then I went back and tweaked it and everything, and it turned out pretty good, I think. And actually, this one was started just after the Argus was finished, before either of those, and it was just finished recently. And then we've got the Demeter, which is a very popular ship. It's a salvager. And this is really where I started figuring out my thirds rule too, because the front part is most of your systems, your salvager. This is your interior. These are your engines, and they are actually mostly engine blocks and shield blocks and things like that. couple of little turrets, not particularly great, but I decided exposed systems were okay. It's fine to do exposed systems, just try to choose which systems you allow to be exposed carefully, depending on where you're at. You know, it just is one of those things, and you just sort of learn to tweak different things, and it's all about experimentation. You know, we got this weird floor pattern and all, and then you can kind of come up here. You know, and obviously this is, as new blocks are added to the game, you can do more. And, you know, this is getting to the point of building something like this, the Arturius. Now both of these are work in progress. Getting to this, you know, to the point where you're going to start on your Titan, I would really suggest build you know, if you're feeling more confident in your building skills, you're starting to figure out what sizes different things need to be to look good, and what you need to do, you know, to get different effects and all. Not like a huge amount, but you know, you're starting to kind of figure it out. Build a 300-meter ship in whatever direction you want. That will teach you so much, and it will really help you. That's my suggestion anyway. So yeah, and these are current projects, and I don't know how they're going to turn out exactly. This one's obviously very rough, so is that. There's no interior to this one yet. Hell, the wedging's not even done on the outside. It's not done on the outside of this one. This one won't have an interior because I'm playing around with combat-based stuff. But there will be a secondary version of this with a full interior, you know, windows, and it'll be a lot prettier. Yeah. So it's really all about don't force yourself to try to find your build style or anything like that. You know, let it kind of happen. But if you want to figure things out, the best thing to do is just basically build what I'm going to call a medium-sized ship, 300 meters in whatever direction, and it tends to really help. And just always think you can add a little bit more detail. Just try not to get, you know, to the point where when you look at it, you just can't tell what's going on. You know, with this, there are certain areas that's like that, especially up here towards the front. And one of the nice things about this ship is the closer you get to it, the more detail you end up seeing. For instance, this center part, right? Look at it from here, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all the different layers. That's a really cool effect, and it takes a long time to get there. But work at it. And if you want any other advice from me on what you can do to improve maybe different aspects of shipbuilding, I do have a School of Design series. And I'm sorry, this was actually meant to be a relatively short video. It turned out to be kind of rambly and self-promoting and talking about myself and stuff, and I realized I guess that works on my YouTube channel. That makes sense, but at the same time, actually wasn't my goal here. So I guess I'm just a conceited asshole. But my point is that, you know, you can get to here, or you know, to Dalmont's level and Skylord's level. It takes work. It takes actual hard work. You need to sit there and you need to work at it to get there. But, you know, those people that are maybe considered master builders or really good builders, and you see their stuff, if you ask them, they probably started off with something like this. And a lot of us didn't even start off with something this good. I got lucky and found a pirate station with no pirates, and three or four of its turrets were blown off by pirates. So I managed to take it out, and then I had a whole bunch of loot so I could build something like this. That's as simple as it is. I mean, yeah. So don't get frustrated, you know? The jump between this and these right here was probably about a month, maybe not even, maybe like 2 weeks to a month. 2 weeks to where I started thinking about the Athena right here. And the way that I built this was interior first, because I knew I wanted an interior. So one of the things, especially when you're starting out, it'll teach you good proportioning before adding an interior or whatever. You build your interior in the rough shape of the ship, right? So I built all the stuff basically in the middle first, and then I built everything else around it. It really does help. I actually built the Naviri the same way, the Argus the same way. Yeah, it's a very, very helpful process, especially when you're getting started, because it teaches you, you know, how big do these things need to be? Because I kept running into the problem where, you know, I'd build this, you know, relatively cool looking, or at least promising looking shell, and then, you know, the ceiling would be, you know, it'd be like 2 blocks high, and that's not a very high ceiling, and I would want a higher ceiling, and obviously I couldn't do it, so I'd have to scrap the whole project. If you build the interior first, your shell will always be the right size. Just a thought. But yeah, just don't forget that, you know, we all started at the, you know, at the bottom, just building stuff to survive, and that's always true. Don't get disheartened by, you know, by other people building, you know, really bright and shiny stuff. If you really want to do it, and you put in the time on the ship, I mean, hell, the Athena was to get it to about where it is now. You know, I was working on it like 3 hours a night, like every night, for like a month. Well, maybe not a month, but about 2-3 weeks. I couldn't get enough. It couldn't stop. It was, you know, right there in my very beginning of the game, and I kind of petered out for a little while and started doing some other stuff, you know, smaller ships and stuff like that instead of big ones. But, you know, it takes time to build these things. It really does. You know, I can whip out a ship in, you know, an hour if I want. It won't be very good though. You know, the Akula has a pretty retarded number of hours for the size of it. You know, I probably spent a good 30-40 hours on that thing alone, easily. And don't even get me started on this thing. This Argus. Oh God. I assume I've probably sunk something like, I don't want to say. We'll just say it's probably pretty close to 200 hours on that thing. I love it. And now I'm going to completely rebuild it again, because I'm psycho. Anyway, I hope that kind of cheers you up, and if you ever need a quick pick-me-up, the Stay Inspired video on my channel, linked in the description here. I won't lie, and this is going to sound incredibly conceited, so take it with a grain of salt or whatever. I'm not trying to be conceited, but that Stay Inspired video is something that actually still inspires me. I absolutely love it, and it's true. Every single one of these ships, without any exception, started with a core. Every single one. And if I started with a core, and Dalmont starts with a core, and Skylord starts with a core, and Chris starts with a core, and Tamino starts with a core, and every single shipbuilder out there starts with a core, you can too. Anyway, looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Take it easy, y'all. See you next time.